The diner sat beside an old highway, where people usually stopped for coffee, pie, and quick conversations before moving on. It wasn't the kind of place where dramatic things happened. At least not usually. Near the window sat 16-year-old Sophie. She came every Thursday after physical therapy. The staff knew her. Always the same booth. Always hot chocolate, always a notebook beside her plate. Sophie used a wheelchair after an accident years earlier. But people who knew her rarely thought about that. They talked about her drawings, her jokes, her habit of remembering everyone's birthday. That afternoon she was sketching quietly. Then the front door opened. 3 teenagers walked in loud, confident, the type of people who wanted attention. At first they laughed among themselves. Then one noticed Sophie. He whispered something. The others looked smirked. One walked over. "Hey." Sophie looked up. No answer. He pointed at her wheelchair. "Do you get special treatment here or something?" The waitress immediately stepped closer. "Guys, leave her alone." They laughed. Sophie quietly returned to drawing. That seemed to bother them even more. One grabbed her notebook. She reached for it. He pulled it away. People looked. Nobody moved. Another teenager laughed. "What are you going to do?" Sophie held out her hand. "Please give it back instead." He tossed it onto the floor. She leaned forward to grab it. Then suddenly a sharp sound. One of them slapped her. The diner froze. Nobody expected it. Nobody moved. The teenagers laughed nervously, then left. The door closed. Silence remained. Sophie slowly picked up her notebook. The waitress crouched beside her. "Do you want us to call someone?" Sophie looked at the door, then quietly said no. The waitress was angry, not dramatic. Not loud, just angry. After checking on Sophie and helping her finish her drink, she went behind the counter. One of the regular customers had already seen everything. He quietly pulled out his phone, sent a message that was all. No speeches, no threats. Just, "You should know what happened." An hour passed. The diner returned to normal almost. Sophie stayed drawing again, but slower. Then people heard engines. At first one, then several. Then many heads turned outside. Motorcycles filled the parking lot. Not racing, not showing off. Just arriving. A long line of riders parked neatly. Doors opened. Boots stepped inside. Leather jackets, different ages. Different bikes, about 20 riders. Nobody spoke. The waitress stared. One older biker approached the counter. He removed his helmet, asked quietly, "Is she still here?" The waitress nodded. He looked over, saw Sophie, and smiled. The biker walked over carefully. Stopped beside her table. Sophie looked nervous. He crouched slightly and said, "Hi, Sophie." She blinked. "You know my name?" He smiled. "Your drawings?" She looked confused, then recognized him. Months earlier, she had donated one of her sketches to a motorcycle charity auction. The writers remembered. The biker reached into his vest, pulled out a folded picture, one of Sophie's drawings protected inside plastic. She stared. "You kept it?" He nodded. "It hangs in our clubhouse." Other bikers quietly gathered. No crowding, no pressure. One woman rider smiled. "You drew my motorcycle." Better than real-life. People laughed softly. The atmosphere changed. Nobody mentioned the slap. Nobody asked questions. One biker ordered pie. Another ordered coffee. Another sat nearby and asked about her notebook. Soon the diner became noisy again. But differently, warm, comfortable. Sophie started smiling, then laughing, then talking after a while. The older biker asked, "Want to show us your newest drawing?" She hesitated, then opened the notebook. After dinner, the older biker asked the owner something quietly. The owner smiled, then rolled outside. Parked near the entrance was a custom sidecar motorcycle, clean. Safe, decorated. One rider handed Sophie a helmet. She looked surprised. "What's happening?" The biker smiled. "We're going for dessert." She laughed. "What?" The waitress grinned. "The good place across town?" Sophie looked uncertain, then everyone waited. No pressure finally. She smiled. "Okay." The sidecar ride wasn't fast. It wasn't dramatic, but for someone who had spent months feeling limited, it felt enormous. Cars waved. Kids pointed. Riders stayed around her. Nobody treated her like fragile glass. Nobody acted like heroes, they simply included her. At the dessert shop, they all sat together. One writer asked, "So what should we draw next?" She laughed and started planning changed. A week later, Sophie returned to the diner. Same booth, same hot chocolate. Same notebook, but something was different. The owner pointed toward the wall. A frame had been added inside one of Sophie's drawings. Below it, small words reserved for artists. She smiled, then noticed another thing. Outside parked motorcycles. Not 20, just 3. One writer waved, they came inside. Normal conversation, normal lunch. No speeches, no revenge stories. Nothing dramatic. One biker sat down and asked. So, he pointed at the notebook, working on the next masterpiece. Sophie smiled, opened to a blank page, and started drawing. Later, she would say something nobody forgot that day. "People think bikers came because somebody hurt me." She smiled, but really, she looked at the sketch, they came because somebody remembered me. And somehow that mattered more.